So today I want to talk about 10 things that I learned growing up Filipino in the UK. Hey guys, it's good old Gab and welcome back to my channel. So recently I've been reading a lot of books, and you guys know this because I recently made a video about 5 LGBTQ+ books that I absolutely loved. So one of these books was this book by Ocean Vuong, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. And this whole book goes into the story of Little Dog, this Vietnamese immigrant who lives in the US. It's poetic, and the way that Ocean Vuong writes is just so enthralling. I absolutely loved it. Now this book got me thinking about all the things that I learned as an immigrant here growing up in the UK. So most of you guys know I'm Filipino. I was born in the Philippines and then I moved over to the UK when I was about 3 years old. And I've been living here for basically the rest of my life. I know, I'm turning 25 this year. My quarter-life crisis is about to hit. And because I'm Filipino and I live here in the UK, I've actually experienced a lot of different things. And I feel like a lot of these things are really unique to immigrants coming over and living in a new country, especially a Western country. So today I want to talk about 10 things that I learned growing up Filipino in the UK. Number 1. Filipino food is delicious, and I'm sorry, but it's better than British food. So Filipino cuisine is, in my biased opinion, top tier. We have sinigang, adobo, sisig, some of my favorite dishes of all time. And then we also have a bunch of really nice Filipino sweet treats, and I don't think British food can just ever top that. For the longest time I actually had a packed lunch made by my mom and dad, and sometimes I would have things like leftover rice and some of the food that we had the night before. And then I just remember being in the classroom eating this kind of food and people kind of going, what is that? That's not a sandwich. And then for the longest time I actually got shy bringing in Filipino food. Dad actually started making sandwiches for me because I got really shy about it. I eventually transitioned into British school lunches. School lunches in the UK are just terrible. Shepherd's pie? Fish finger sandwiches? Like, bro, what is this? Like, it's good, but it's just, it could be better. Number 2. I needed my Filipino community. So one thing that I've realized growing up in the UK is that there is actually a severe lack of really close, tight-knit communities. Growing up here, maybe I just wasn't exposed to it, but I just didn't see a lot of those communities come together. Which is why I absolutely loved my Filipino community growing up. We had things like Barrio Fiesta, religious festivals. These are events where Filipino people from all over my region would come and just enjoy and talk and share. Of course, you know, there are some people in the community that you never get along with, and that's just gonna be a fact of life. But for the most part, that community was essential for me to become me. So this is where I learned majority of my Filipino culture. So I had my Filipino titos and titas teach me conversational Tagalog growing up, and they also taught me the really cool traditions that we had. And we just had this really big network of people and friends that we could talk to all the time. Number 3, elders are treated differently. So one thing that I actually realized was that Filipino elders, so parents, titos and titas, just people who are generally older than you, even kuyas, or so older brothers, and ates, older sisters, you treat them with respect. You know, if they were to talk to you, you would listen to them. If they were to tell you to do something, you'd usually do it. And it was a bit of a culture shock trying to understand and learn that this is different for people living here in the UK. Like, yeah, all my British friends did love their parents, but there wasn't the same level of respect that us Filipino kids had compared to British kids. And it would just be weird calling my friends' parents by their first name. Like, that was just weird. Like, I needed like a tito or a tita or like an uncle or an auntie in front of that. So for a little bit I actually struggled with how to interact with my friends' parents, just because I wasn't sure whether I should address them a certain way or be more polite. So I always erred on the side of caution, and I was super polite. Number 4, karaoke is essential for a fun party. I don't know what it is about Filipino people. You know, there's this stereotype that Filipinos can sing really well. I'm not joking, it's true. I mean, I'm not one of those Filipinos. Because I can't sing well, I actually went the other way and started learning instruments so I could help accompany the people who can sing well. I remember Bretman Rock saying that if Filipinos were in the Olympics, we would win gold. Number 5, racism is just a fact of life. So growing up in the UK as an immigrant wasn't easy. I was one of 3 Filipino boys in in my school. I remember going through school and getting picked on for being, you know, the Asian boy. But one thing that I find absolutely crazy is that growing up from a young age, I had experienced that so much that it just kind of dulled me. I just kind of accepted that as a fact of life, and I thought that this was just how it's supposed to be. Right now, I'm actually looking at the newer generation of Filipino students, and the one thing that I've noticed is that they don't accept the BS that I accepted. If they see racism, they call it out, and I never had the balls to do that. So mad props to them. I think now that the UK is getting more and more international, this is a really good thing. A lot more people are being exposed to different cultures and different backgrounds, and we're starting to see the world as this kind of interconnected place. So we have to learn how to live with each other. Number 6. Code switching is a necessary tool. So this was actually something that I picked up in my sister and I noticed in her first. I noticed that in our Filipino community, me and my sister would act a certain way, and then in school, my sister would act a different way. She would literally just put on a British accent. I remember seeing that and being like, bro, what are you doing? Like, stop putting on a British accent. Everybody knows that your real accent is this. But it made her feel more safe, and I think it actually helped her kind of integrate better into school. It kind of becomes like a different persona where I become a slightly more confident version of myself. So I actually use that British accent to do presentations or when I'm doing my straight passing voice. Number 7. Ask your parents stories. Number 7, ask your parents stories. Now, this isn't just a Filipino thing. I think this is just an everybody kind of thing. But one thing that I've realized is that my Filipino parents are just so full of stories. Like, I remember my dad telling me a bunch of stories about his life in the Philippines and how different it was to here in the UK. They grew up in a completely different environment with less technology and just completely different people and mindsets. Recently, I asked my mom about growing up in the Philippines, and she told me this whole lore drop that I just didn't know about her. I live a super privileged life. Everything has been handed to me. My mom grew up in the countryside. She had to work her way to university and then move to the UK just so she could provide for my family. And those stories about the Philippines are just so amazing and complex. It's just such a great thing to listen to. Number 8, affection is showed differently. So I mean this in a couple different ways. So the first way is parental. Physical affection and words of affirmation just weren't used a lot. It would actually do things like show me rather than tell me. And actually talking to a lot of my Asian friends, this is a really common pattern. It's more of a show, don't tell kind of culture. My mom and I are in a really good mood. She would cut fruits instead of saying I love you. I've had to ask her to physically tell me these words of affirmation, and I would actually hug her to show her how much I love her as well. It actually took a bit of time for both of us to kind of learn this together, but it was really fun learning. So there's another kind of affection that I've seen with Filipino people as well. This is more to do with friends and titos and titas, or aunties and uncles. This is the very pushy, like come, you're here, we'll take care of you kind of affection. It's this kind of affection where they would give you food and you are expected to eat it even if you are full. And then you sit and chat and chismosa for a little bit, and it's just, yeah, it's a different kind of affection. And this is something that I haven't really experienced with a lot of my British friends. Now that I think about it, a lot of Filipino culture has a really big emphasis on food. Number 9, I am not Filipino and I'm not British. Now, it has taken me 24 years to understand this fact. Yes, I am ethnically Filipino. Yes, I grew up in a Filipino community. And yes, I can understand Tagalog only a little bit. But I grew up here. Most of my friends were primarily white and British. I had British teachers. I grew up in British culture with British media. I mix things up, right? So I have learned a bunch of Filipino things, but I've also learned a bunch of British things. The way I think and act is slightly more British, but the way I enjoy myself is slightly more Filipino. And I am never gonna be 100% both. And I think this is a really good thing, because I'm not 100% of both. I have this really unique perspective where I can get the best aspects and just keep them for myself. And number 10. Filipinos are absolutely loved. This isn't just a UK thing. I think Filipino people in general are just generally loved across the world. We're known as the happy people, the people who love to bring food, the people who love to party, who love to laugh with their bellies and their hearts. So yeah, these are 10 things that I've learned while growing up as Filipino here in the UK. Thanks guys for watching this video. It was an absolute blast to make. Please don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace out!